We already said earlier that all of the decisions that they were making were being made based on their knowledge and their intimate knowledge that there was a Jewish God, and that Jewish God actually intervened in matters that were pertaining to his people. As we said when we discovered the dates, Achashverosh very well remembered his grandfather-in-law Belshazzar, who had the writing on the wall of Daniel, and who died on that day, as was foretold by the Jewish prophet. And it was because specifically he used the vessels of the Beit HaMikdash. So Achashverosh is very keenly aware of the fact that his actions with regard to the Jews carry ramifications. So he says, I'm afraid, maybe he'll do to me like what he did to those that came before me. What else came before him? Also the story of, of Nebuchadnezzar, whose rise to power was unbelievable, but who also, in the end, wound up stark raving mad.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm just not sure what came chronologically. I mean, I'm guessing this came after the Mishteh, but in the Mishteh, he already used the Kelim, so he's already showing he doesn't care and he's not scared of actions to the Jews.
Excellent question. I was waiting for someone to ask that question. What's the answer? The answer is that Achashverosh, his decision about the Kelim referenced the Beit HaMikdash. So in other words, the God of the Jews said that in the 70th year, I'm going to bring the Jews back and I'm going to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. Now that 70 years are up, according to my Cheshbon, Belshazzar's Cheshbon was wrong. My Cheshbon is right. Now that he didn't do it, obviously God has decided he doesn't want to choose the Jews anymore. He's got over them. He's obviously moved on either to another nation or to some other plan, or doesn't really care so much anymore about redeeming them or bringing them back to Israel. But that just says he doesn't care about bringing them back to Israel. It doesn't say anything about him wiping them out. Mm-hmm. So here, there's something that's gone much further. Using the vessels says God's not going to rebuild the temple. Killing the Jews says God doesn't care about the Jews at all. Not that he's not going to redeem them or bring them home. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. Amale. So what's Haman's response to allay the fears of Achashverosh? Amale said to him, Yeshno mina mitzvot, right? What does it mean? Yeshno am echad, there is one nation. He fell asleep. He's using a word that can be read in two different ways. I've already explained.
Rabbi,
yeah?
We lost you. Can you go back to Yeshno Am Echad, please?
Yes, Yeshno is a strange word in Hebrew. It should really say Yesh Am Echad. There is one nation. Why does it say Yeshno? So I already explained a couple of times that there's a reason why, when it comes to the Sefarim of Tanakh, when we write the Sefer, when we all went to see the Codex the other week, you all noticed that it has the cantillation notes, the Ta'amim, and also the Nikudot. But for a Megillah that's kosher, for a Sefer Torah that's kosher, it's supposed to not have Nikudot. And the Sefer Ta'amei Minhagim writes that the reason for that is because if there's Nikudot and it tells you the word Yeshno, you can only read it Yeshno. But without Nikudot, you could read it in many different ways. Yushnu, Yashnu, Yeshno, right? Yashanu. So there's many different ways to express it. And you're supposed to learn potentially all of those ways as possible ways to be able to understand what's being said. So therefore,
is that because we don't know? Is that because we don't know 100% what was meant to be said?
No, it's more than that. It's meant to be a double entendre. So in other words, Yeshno could come across as there is one nation, and that's just what he's saying. But the choice of that specific word illustrates that he was saying Yashnu, that they have fallen asleep. These Jews, they're sleeping on the job. They're they're not doing the mitzvot, and therefore, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is not going to be bothered if you destroy the Jews. You know why? Because they're sleeping. Now, I want to say something because I think that this is very important. It's a strange way of saying that the Jewish people are not keeping the mitzvot. Yashnu, they fell asleep, right? Why is Haman invoking specifically that word, sleeping? He should really be saying instead, that they didn't do the mitzvot, avru. The answer is that not only is Haman speaking Lashon Hara to the king Achashverosh, remember every time it says the word Hamelech in the Megillah, who's it also talking about? Not just Achashverosh, but God himself, God the king. Haman says to the king, Yashnu, they fell asleep. Achashverosh, you're worried that the Jewish people are going to be protected by God because God is the protector of the Jews. Where do we see that God protects the Jews? We say it in Shila Ma'alot. Hine, behold, lo yanum velo yishan shomei Israel. The God of the Jews does not slumber, nor does he sleep. Says Haman to Achashverosh and to God, if the Jews are going through the motions, they're doing the mitzvot, but they fell asleep. There's no energy. There's no excitement. How is God going to punish them? He'll react midah kineged midah, and the protector of the Jews, that's lo yanum velo yishan, will also fall asleep. And therefore, he invokes the word yeshno, which also means yashnu, that they fell asleep, to be able to make his case to Achashverosh and also to God himself.
Rabbi, so Haman is able to decipher all this from Shir Ma'alot and Yeshno and Yashnu, but he doesn't know that Moshe was also born on Zainada.
Excellent question. I said we're going to come back to it. I love that we're adding another layer to the question. We'll come back to it soon. One last point, okay? The last point that is important over here is the recognition of the fact of what Haman needs to say in order to be able to drive his point home. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. One would imagine that the fact that someone is doing a mitzvah, okay, he's sleepy, he's tired, he came to shul, his head's like this, fine, but he did the mitzvah. Is that enough to be able to create a kitrug, a complaint, against the Jewish people? The fact that they're sleeping, that they're going through the motions half asleep? The answer is, from the pasuk we learn that it is. It says that when God destroys the Jewish people, all the tochacha, what do we read? Tachat asher lo avadeta, because you did not serve Hashem. Anyone know the end of that pasuk? My Uber driver knows it. What's going on with you guys? My Uber driver just said, "B'simcha u'b'tuv levav," because you did not serve God with joy and with a happy heart, with a good heart. The Chachamim point out, you know what that pasuk actually is telling us? It doesn't say Tachat asher lo avadta, because you didn't serve me. It says because you didn't serve me with joy and with a good heart, meaning that the people who received the punishment of the tochacha and the Torah were people who did serve God, but they did not serve God with energy, with excitement, with a happy heart, with joy. And that is, again, this concept of yeshno, yashnu, that they did things whilst they were half asleep. Okay, my friends, the last bit of this I will add when we talk about the Jewish people that were coming to receive the Torah. We know on Shavuot, we stay up all night and we learn the entire night of Shavuot. And what's the reason? Because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to give the Torah, the Jewish people was early in the morning and they overslept. And till this day, therefore, we have to do tikkun. Now, here's the question. Imagine your worker oversleeps, you're upset. I get it, but to say that the Jewish people needs to stay up all night every year on Shavuot as a kapara for the fact that the Jewish people hit snooze once upon a time on one night, that's a little bit much, isn't it? And the answer is super powerful. We're not staying up to be able to rectify the fact that they slept. We're staying up to illustrate that we are not the same today. that our mitzvot and our Torah keeps us up at night, that there's an excitement and a joy. Maybe we can't marshal it always, but when we can, when we're thinking, when we're in the zone, this is something that we're excited about. You know, you're at a party, you're having a great time. You can't but look at your watch. I can't believe it's already 2 o'clock, already 3 o'clock in the morning, right? You fall in love. You're sitting there talking to this girl. You don't even realize, yeah, Annie, oh my gosh, almost sunrise. My friends, when you're in love, you don't fall asleep. What Haman was saying is, if they're sleeping, then there's no love. If there's no love, then God won't save them. You have nothing to worry about. Continues the Gemara. So what does Achashverosh respond? Amar le, he says, okay, you want to tell me the Jews fell asleep? Fine. Aval itbau Rabbanan. They have certain rabbis, and the rabbis are very connected, and they're doing everything, and they're doing it the right way. Amar le, he said to them, Yeshno am echad. Haman responded with the next words of his sentence. Every word is, I don't know if you know how fencing works. There's something called parry, thrust. You knock the sword away, you cut in. Every line that Achashverosh rebutted or asked a question on, Haman responded to with the next words of the sentence. Yeshno, yashnu. What about the rabbis, Achashverosh said? Amale amechad. They are one nation. What does that mean? Shema Toma, right? What does that mean? Amechad. They're one people. The fact that the Chachamim are doing the right thing is not enough, because they're also liable and held responsible by the fact that they're one people and that the rest of the people are not doing it correctly. He responded, Shema Tomar, Korcha ani oseh v'malchutecha. Maybe you might be worried, Haman said, that there's going to be a bald spot. Yani, if I get rid of the Jews, imagine Barminan, someone decided they wanted to kill all the Jews in America. So you can imagine that Biden might say that that's a bad idea. You know why? Because then who's going to pay taxes in New York City? That would be Biden's response. Or, you know, Williamsburg might be very empty, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So, Achashverosh, maybe you're worried about the fact that suddenly there'll be areas where there's nobody there. Don't worry about that. Why? Because Yeshno Am Echad Mifuzar Umfurad Ben Ha'amim. They are Mifuzarim amongst the nations. So therefore, if you get rid of them, there's some here, some over there, some somewhere else, but they're spread out everywhere. It won't be noticeable. Shema Tomar Itana Aminayu. Maybe you'll say this, I derive benefit from these Jews. Miforad, he says. Miforad literally translates as apart, okay? Like nifrad, they're apart. However, he uses the word miforad, kipreda azu, she'ena oseh perot. It's like the mule. Now, let me just explain what that means. There are a mule is created by crossbreeding a horse and a donkey. But because this crossbreed is not a horse and not a donkey, it can't ever give birth to anything after it. That's how they explain the mule, okay? So miforad means it can't give birth to something else. So it's a way of calling the Jewish people a derogatory term, while at the same time saying they're not united. So they're not united, they're not living together, so there won't be a bald spot, but also at the same time, miforad, they don't actually give you, they don't produce anything for you. So you're not going to lose anything by getting rid of them. B'shema tomar ika midinta menayu. Maybe you're going to say, okay, 1 second. Even if they're, you know, maybe spread out a little bit, maybe together they create their own state or city-state, and I get taxes from that, or that helps me in some way. Talmud lomar b'chol medinot malchutecha. They are spread in all the medinot. They aren't their own medina. So therefore, it's not like you go from 127 to 126 because you lost out on a medina when you wipe out the Jews. They don't make up their own medina. They're just part and parcel of everybody else's. So therefore, there's nothing that you're going to lose from not having it. And so each word is knocking out another rebuttal by Achashverosh. V'dateim shonot mikol am. Their religious practices, okay? That means law. Their religious practices, shonot mikol am. They're different from any other nation. They're lo akli minan. They don't eat from our food. They're lo nasvi minan, and they don't marry our people. They're lo minsavilan. They don't let us marry them, right? So they not only do we not have a benefit from them geopolitical, not only do we not have benefit from them practical because they're like a mifurad, like a mule. So we also don't have any genetic help from them because they won't marry us. They do not follow the king's laws. The mafki, the kula shata, the shehi pehi. What does that mean? Every single day of the calendar is another holiday. Okay, either it's Shabbat, or it's Passover, or it's Rosh Hashanah, or it's something. Okay, what does Shehi Pehi mean? Shehi Pehi means Shabbat Hayom. Okay, or Pehi is Pesach Hayom. So no matter when you go, it's always a Jewish holiday. So don't worry about the Datei HaMelech that they're going to work on the king's laws. They don't follow our calendar. And for the king, it's not beneficial to leave them, to keep them here, to leave them over. Why? Because they eat our food and they drink our wine and they humiliate the king. What does that mean that they humiliate the king? If a fly falls in the cup of one of the people, Zorko v'shoteu. What does a Jew do? He spills out the fly, but he drinks the rest of the wine. V'im-adoni hamelech, and if my master, the king, nogea b'koso shel echad mehem, touches even one of the cups of their wine, chofto b'karka v'hen hashoteu, he'll throw the whole cup of wine on the ground, and he won't drink it because it's yayin nesech. Rafi, look, the guy knows Shulchan Aruch also.
I know. I'm thinking it.
If it is good for the king, he should write in the books, in the decrees of the kingdom to destroy them. And I will give 10,000 loaves or talents of silver to the treasury of the king. Okay, so you know what I always loved about this? Haman is the ultimate hedger. Right? He doesn't come and say, let's destroy the Jews. He gives a run-on sentence that literally shuts every possible argument against what he's saying down. So every word is there to be able to dispel another counterpoint by Achashverosh, why he should not destroy the Jews. And my favorite part of this is, the last bit is, after convincing Achashverosh that everything that he says makes sense, and there's no reason to leave them, and there's nothing to be afraid of. What does he end his pitch with?
If that doesn't work, here's some cash.
I'll pay you exactly. COD, cash on death. I will pass you the most incredible, amount, fortune of money to the king's treasuries to be able to destroy the Jews. Now, it's a very interesting thing here, this pitch. Because you go on this rant, and then you end the pitch with 10,000 talents of silver. What exactly is Haman trying to say to Achashverosh here? Like, can I give you an example? Let me give you an example. Let's say,
you're breaking through.
That painting on your wall, it's ugly. It doesn't match the frame. It's outdated. It's derivative, but I'll pay you $150 million for it. What's your first reaction?
But everything he's saying is not true.
Guy's a liar. Because
just
if
wants
everything you just
himself.
said was true, you wouldn't need to offer me the money. If you're offering me the money, it must mean that the painting is worth not 150 million, but 500 million, right? That would be your very first reaction to someone coming to your house with an offer like that. Haman is so clever, and he's really thought this through. And then at the end, so Harry, you said in the end, I'll give you the cash. What? Because cash is king. But to my mind, he really risks undermining his whole argument. So what's going on over here that Haman offers at the end the 10,000 talents of silver?
Maybe the money is to help Achashverosh annihilate the Jews if there's a cost involved in spreading the doctrine around 127 nations.
It was free. You know why?
Because the people were going to do it, but
And why were the people going to do it?
because they love to kill Jews.
Number one, but you forgot the second reason.
They get to take the booty. Their homes
Take the
and
goods.
They get to take the booty.
You keep the guy's house. You take his money, his car, his boat, whatever he's got. So who paid for the annihilation of the Jews? The Jews paid for it. Yeah? The Jews paid for it. Reminds you, by the way, during the Holocaust, when the Nazis were telling the Jews that they were relocating them, I don't know if you know this, they charged the Jews for the train ticket to take them to Auschwitz. So the Jews were going to pay for their own destruction. So he does not need to pay for the annihilation of the Jews.
Does it validate the plan?
Sorry?
Does it add validity to the plan? Like within in the case you just said, here we're going, you're really relocating you. Here you have to pay your money to do it. So Haman says, here's everything, and then here I'm putting an extra effort into it. Here's my part of the plan.
Again, I understand that point, but in what way does it validate it?
This is
No,
his.
because it's going to cost money to run this project.
No,
Right,
that's my point here. That's my point here. This is not a situation where Haman and Achashverosh are hiring the army of Persia and Media to be able to go do this. He's not getting mercenaries. He's not getting an army. He's putting out a declaration, and he's telling the people who hate the Jews and the neighbors of the Jews that they are mifuzar mifurat ben amin, that they should kill them. This costs nothing to Achashverosh. Zero. So what's going on? Why is Haman making this pitch?
He could be losing tax revenue. I know he said that the Jews don't pay taxes, but it's hard to believe that they'd still be around if they weren't paying taxes and participating.
So if Achashverosh, if Haman dealt with that, with the fact that they're mitforad, then he dealt with it. So you're saying maybe he dealt with it, but Achashverosh might not believe him. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying Achashverosh cares about the money, obviously. So
Okay, so let's leave it as one potential answer that Haman threw in this argument, simply because, did it say go here? Yeah. Haman threw the argument in simply because maybe Achashverosh wouldn't believe him that the Jews weren't paying taxes or that they didn't bring anything worthwhile. So maybe this was the way for him to get him to believe him.
This you said once in a class. This is the Machasid HaShekel.
Oh, okay.
He knows. He knows shots. The Haman. Come on.
So we've got one answer coming from Jonah. He understood that the 10,000 talents of silver was, and this is what he said to the Jewish child. He went to the Jewish child and he said, "What did you learn today?" And the child tells him what he learned. We're going to come to see it. We're going to see it later. And he said that your machatzita shekel outweighed my machatzita shekel. Now, by the way, if you remember, The halacha is that we're supposed to give machatzita shekel when? Before we read the Megillah. Why? Why do we give machatzita shekel before the Megillah? And the answer is, in halacha brought down, that before we give Haman a chance to rise against us, we give the money to tzedakah just like back then, where the money that we had given to tzedakah, to the Beit HaMikdash, was what saved us from the 10,000 talents of silver. So God said to Moshe, make sure to institute this tzedakah. 10,000 talents of silver would replace the korbanot of the Jews. He was saying to Achashverosh, look, this God, he gets something from the Jews. Maybe if we want to wipe the Jews out, we need to replace what they were giving to him, and then he'll allow us to destroy them. How much is it going to cost to bring those korbanot? Here's 10,000 talents of silver to pay for the korbanot that will replace what the Jews are giving to their God. That's one opinion. Okay? I want to give one last piece. It's very interesting language in the pasuk. Let's take a look at the full pasuk of Aseret of 10,000 talents. Look on the side of the Gemara. Can you see it? If it's good in the eyes of the king, let it be written to destroy them. And 10,000 talents of silver, eshkol I will weigh, al yedei oseh hamelacha, through the hands of those who do the work, lehavi el ginzeh hamelech, to bring to the ginzeh, which means the storehouses of the king. Now, it's hard to understand what that means. And I'm not sure if anyone really understands or realizes what I'm pointing out. So let me ask you, what's strange? What do you notice that's strange about that pasuk? Anyone know?
I thought he said he didn't have to pay anybody.
Sorry?
I thought he said he didn't have to pay anybody.
Well,
So
we'll
he's
see.
telling the people to do it.
No, but again, he's making this offer. And we're asking a question why he's making the offer. But what's strange? What jumps out at you that just is interesting? It's like I don't want to say unnecessary, but it's something that maybe you would not have noticed or you would not have thought should be in that pasuk.
Oh.
So I want to suggest something that I find a little bit strange. Okay? At the end of the day, Haman is at the mercy, however powerful he is, at the mercy of Achashverosh, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah.
In the end, he kills him. Now, if that's the case, I mean, I could imagine if I printed counterfeit bills that I would go and pass that bill in Morton Williams. I might try and pass the sketch bill in Commerce or, I don't know, in some random store or bodega. I'm definitely not going to walk into the courthouse and try to pay my fine with a counterfeit bill, right?
Okay.
Because that's the last person you'd want to screw over because they're the people that are going to get you in trouble. What is Haman saying? I'm going to give 10,000 talents of silver. Eshkol I will weigh al yedei oseh melacha.
For those
What?
that are doing the work to bring the
I'm going to
silver?
weigh in the hands of those doing the work. What does that mean? I'm going to make sure to show you, Achashverosh, that I didn't mess you over in terms of not giving you the amount I said I was going to give you. That's a death penalty. Haman should have said, I'm going to give 10,000 silver kesef, elgin ze hamelech. No one would be stupid enough to try and cheat the king. So what does he mean? I'm going to weigh in the hands of those who do the work. What work? Okay, so we'll see the answer to that in just a second, okay? Amar Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, like we just started saying, Galui v'yadu lefnei mishama v'haya olam hakadosh baruch hu knew. Shatit Haman nishkol shkalim Yisrael, that he's going to count and weigh shkalim against the Jews. Therefore, God made sure to first give the shikalim commandment to the Jewish people before his shikalim. And that's what we said the halakha states. On the first day of Adar, we let everybody know that they have an obligation to pay the shikalim and also to ensure that they're not planting things together. And obviously the time of Adar in the agricultural calendar, that's the time you need to make such an announcement, okay? So you see that that's the point, what's it called? That's the point in that he's trying to make. The point he's trying to make is that the shikalim, you're drifting back, Dave. The shikalim were there as a mitzvah in order to outweigh the shikalim of Haman. Now, I have a question for you. Let's say you don't buy the idea that the shikalim of Haman were to buy korbanot. Let's say you don't buy that idea. Why does God need to outweigh the shikalim that he's going to give Achashverosh with the shikalim of the Jews?
So there is a zechut of giving them that they get protected against the.
Oh, so Harry's saying very, very smart. So it's not that those shkalim were a good thing that needed to be overrun, but rather that those shekalim were for a bad thing. But what happened was that God eliminated the power of those shekalim in the story by making sure that the Jews had given the shekalim already to the right cause. So when God punishes midah keneged midah, God also rewards midah keneged midah. So he took the shekalim out of the story of Purim, and therefore they were not there. They did not play a role. Okay, let's continue, and we'll see exactly something very powerful here that will help us understand what we were looking at earlier. The Gemara continues. Vayomer Hamelech leHaman. Haman says, Achashverosh, hey, how are you? Haman says, the king says to Achashverosh, leHaman, hakesef natun lecha ve'ha'am la'asot bo ketov beinecha. You keep your money, and the people la'asot bo ketov beinecha. So let's take a look at the answer of Haman. Answer of Achashverosh. Amar Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba explains Mashal. Compare a Mashal. Mashal de Achashverosh Haman lemahadav domeh. What is these two people? How would one understand to what it can be compared? The Shnei bnei Adam, to two people. Le'echad haya lo tel b'toch sadeu. One of them has a big mountain of earth in his sadeh, in his field. Le'echad haya lo charitz b'toch sadeu. One of them has a big ditch in his field. Baal haritz, the one who has the ditch, says to the other guy, he says to himself, ten li tel zeh. If anyone would give me this ditch, this mound of earth to be able to fill my ditch, vedamim, I would pay for it. Baal tel omer, the owner of the mound, says to himself, ten li charitz. If anyone would give me a ditch to be able to get rid of my mound of earth, vedamim, I pay for it. Liyamim nizdavgu etzeh etzel zeh. This one, zu etzel zu. This one winds up meeting, they wind up seeing each other at a party. The guy who owns the ditch says to the guy who owns the mountain, the mound of dirt, of earth, would you mind? Could you sell me your dirt? He says to him, take it please for free. If only you would just take it off my hands, I'd be happy. Even if you took it for free, I'd be happy for you to take it. Rabbi Abba is saying that when Haman came and he tried to convince Achashverosh to destroy the Jews, Achashverosh was like, you don't have to pay me. You're doing me the biggest favor.
Right.
I've been wanting to get rid of these people. Thank you so much. Hazak Baruch. HaKesef natun lach. The kesef is given to you. What does it mean, a kesef natun lach? Achashverosh doesn't say you don't have to pay. He says the kesef is natun lach. And the am that you want, do with what you want. Like the guy who has the earth. He's like, I've been just trying to get rid of this for so long. You're now allaying my fears. You're telling me I don't have anything to be worried about because they're falling asleep, because they're not united, etc., etc. Take them off my hands. I'd be very happy if you do so. Now, from that perspective, we understand also what Haman was saying. Haman is desperate. He has this problem in his backyard. He has this charitz, this ditch in him. It's bothering him so much. He'll do anything to get rid of it. He tells Achashverosh effectively as follows. He says, listen, I know that for you, the best thing would be to get rid of the Jews. He says, but I want to come clean. I want to come clean. I'm not only asking you to do this because it's good for you. He says, I'm desperate. I would pay to get rid of them. Now that we see Rabbi Abba's explanation, we understand Haman's motivation, why he says to him, I'll pay you 10,000 talents of silver. He's saying to Achashverosh, he's saying, listen, I want you to do this. It makes sense for you as the king. But Dachilak, I want you to understand, even if it doesn't work for you, I'm willing to pay for this. I hate them so much. I want to go back to Rafi's question and Jonah's question of earlier. Haman throws these lots to destroy the Jewish people, and it comes out in this month. And he says to himself, wow, great month. Moshe is dead. Moshe dies on this day, in this month. And he does not know that on that day, Moshe Rabbeinu was born. The question is, how could that be? However he found out one, he found out the other. Whether he was learning Gemara classes about all the things that he knows about in Judaism, he should know that Moshe Rabbeinu's death is in that day. So there's something that I think is really powerful. One of the things that we cannot ever forget in the story is Haman's origin story. Where does Haman come from? Haman comes from Agagi. Where does Agag come from? Who is he? The king of Amalek. The idea of being the king of Amalek doesn't only mean that he's the royal bloodline of Amalek, but rather that he's the most Amalekite. He's the king Amaleki. What is the nature of Amalek? From the beginning of time, the number one, destruction of the Jews. But the destruction of the Jewish people is based on a very deep theory that they have in the existence of the world. And that is, the Pasuk says, remember what Amalek did to you. Asher karecha baderech. Asher karecha baderech means that they happened upon you. Coincidence. The idea...
He knew he was born that day, but...
Excellent.
Just a coincidence.
Haman looks at the calendar and he throws lots. What do the lots mean? Why is he doing that? So the first time we looked at it, we said, you know what? Haman is trying to find a good day to kill the Jews. He's trying to find which day is a good day for that mazal. But really, it goes much deeper than that. What he's doing to kill the Jews is not just picking a day to kill them with a knife. He's destroying the essence of the Jewish people on a spiritual level. What do the Jewish people stand for in this world? The nature, the dream, the idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Jewish people stand for God in this world. Haman is trying to wipe out the very essence of God in this world. How does he do that? By killing the people who represent him. So what does Haman do? He says, look, I'm going to destroy the Jews. I'm going to destroy the Jews by just rolling the dice, by saying that their very existence is up to chance. He throws the dice. The dice come out on the month of Adar. Haman is overjoyed. Why? Because it only goes to prove his concept. If ever there would be a day, a month, a time where the Jewish people should be protected from being destroyed, when would it be? It would be in a month that has positive connotations for them. But if I throw the dice and the people who supposedly have God on their side, who do not believe in circumstance, who do not believe in coincidence, if it turns out that I wind up getting the day, the month that Moshe Rabbeinu dies in, that's the biggest simcha in the world, because it knocks out their argument from both sides, from both perspectives. Says the Gemara, what Haman does, every person who looks at life like a coincidence, what do? Every person. Anytime where things are random, they point and they say, look, you see, things are random. When something is like, wow, it blew my mind. On this day, on the day I did the mitzvah, I did the deal, can't believe it. I prayed to Hashem and the person got better. What does the person who believes in chance say about that? It's just a coincidence. The coincidence it turned out on that day. That means that Haman, in his desire to see randomness, is so overcome by his own perspective on the world, the way he wants to see things. He's so overcome by it that when he sees a sign that promotes what he believes in, what does he say? See, it's a sign. When he sees a sign that goes against what he believes in, what does he say? Mikre. So Haman used his Mikre card on the day that Moshe was born, and he used Moshe's death to be able to show that it was a good omen. And if there's anything that embodies who Haman is, that right there is it. A person that's capable of ignoring every sign that says against what he believes in, and then choosing to find all the signs that believe, that say what he's saying. Okay? Let's end with this last piece. Says the Gemara, "Vayasur HaMelech et ta'abato." He's so happy to get rid of the Jews. Immediately, he takes off his ring, the signet ring. Amar Rabbi Abba Kana said, "Gidol aserat tabat." Greater is the taking off the ring of Achashverosh. More than the 48 prophets and the Sheva Neviot and the 7 female prophetesses. Every one of the prophets told them that if you don't do the mitzvot, terrible things are going to happen. You need to do teshuvah. They all exhorted the Jewish people. They told them that they needed to do teshuvah, and nothing. The Jews did not repent. None of them managed to get them to return to the good path. Hasarat tabat, the minute Achashverosh takes off his ring to sign the decree to destroy the Jews, it wound up bringing them back to the good. Now, I just want to point out one piece, and that with this we'll end, and we'll continue from the Tanu Rabbanan in the next session. And that is that what is very, very powerful to me is now we understand what we read earlier in the Gemara. A person has an obligation to become intoxicated b'puraya on Purim ad de lo yada, until he does not know the difference between Baruch Mordechai, blessed is Mordechai, and Arur Haman, and cursed is Haman. Now, we've said already many times that that's a very strange thing to ask of a person, that the person can't tell the difference between their rabbi and Hitler. How drunk do you need to be to get to that level? And we gave different explanations when we learned the Gemara back then. But when we just read this Gemara, we actually have a deep understanding as to what the Gemara means. Normally, a person is able to look at things that are good that happen in his life and say, oh, these are good things. Oh, these are bad things. A person needs to drink enough on Purim to recognize that there's really no difference between Arur Haman and Baruch Mordechai. Because what makes a tzaddik blessed? The fact that his deeds bring the people closer to God, to Torah and Mitzvot. What makes a person cursed, a Rasha cursed? Terrible things that he does in his life that hurt other people. But ultimately, the Arur Haman does exactly the same thing as the Baruch Mordechai. Gedolah Hasarata Tabat, greater was the taking off of the ring than all the Nevi'im. So on Purim, a person drinks, and why does he drink? Because we have to recognize when a person is not thinking so clearly anymore, they're not so sure anymore, 100%. You know, someone asks you, you're drunk, you're like, where do you like? I think it's 65th Street. You know, you think you come up with a date, a time, a place, you're like, oh, I forgot that I moved to 72nd. You know, you're a little bit gassed. That, my friends, is exactly this point. Because in the end, the Sadiqim and the Rishaim, everyone does God's will. The Rashak does God's will against his own will. The Tzaddik does God's will according to God's will. But recognize in the story of Purim that in the end, Arur Haman, Baruch Mordechai, it doesn't make a difference. God's plan, Atzat Amonai Hitakum. In the end, the Etzah, God's counsel, is what will stand. Hitakum will be stood up by everyone's deeds. My friends, you look at the terrorists that are dropping bombs everywhere, and you think to yourself, look at these Rishaim. End of the day, what do those Rishaim do? The Pasuk says that they are called Yishmael because God listens to their prayers. But the question is, if the God listens to their prayers, so then that's what they're known for. The answer is that's what they were supposed to be known for. Yishmael had the power to bring tefillah into this world, but he didn't use it. He didn't choose it. So instead, what happens? He bothers Am Yisrael, tortures Am Yisrael until their prayers are heard. In the end, you will bring prayer to the world, whether you like it or not.
Amen.
Either you'll bring it in a positive way, and then you'll get rewarded, or you'll bring it in a negative way, and then you'll be destroyed. But bring it, you shall. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
Baruch.
Baruch.